So I always say, find one thing in that conversation you can learn here. Everyone has one thing, and make sure you're asking more questions than just talking.
You've got to listen to your gut, but you've got to realize that you might not be able to justify that or rationalize that to other people for quite some time.
When you compound the curiosity, when you bring people together, when you get creative ideas and you get champions that are leading the way, great things happen.
We keep making these connections. Some people will go off and make millions. We're going to miss out. And that's great.
Hey, you're watching Just Press Record on the Cultish Creative YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matt Ziegler, and on each episode, I invite not one, but two guests to join me for a conversation-style interview. These are smart, funny, usually a little eccentric, frequently a little weird, often very online friends of mine. And even if you don't understand what they have in common at first, just wait, because I've seen some common ground between them that I've been dying to ask them about, and Just Press Record. The show practically named itself, seriously. So subscribe, like, comment below, and stick around at the end of the disclosures, disclaimers, and reminders, and, come find me, cultishcreative.com, at cultishcreative on Twitter, and by name on LinkedIn. Without further ado, throw your seatbelts on. Let's make it a record. Okay, I am pressing record now. You're watching Just Press Record right here on the Cultish Creative YouTube channel. I'm your host, Matt Ziegler, and I'm joined today by two glorious strangers. Really, they just have to meet each other. We're turning the curiosity up to 11. It's a 3-Matt show, people. This will get confusing so fast that I'm going to start by proposing nicknames to introduce them. My first Matt. Second Matt? Am I the first Matt? I don't know.
You're the first Matt.
Yeah,
okay, I'll take this.
Number one.
Thank you. Number one, Matt. The second Matt then. Brilliant accent compared to this tri-state area disaster the other two Matts here have going on. I'm going to go with Matt Hugh Grant, British actor angle. Other nickname, I could go with a staph infection, but it's like the good kind, not the bad type of staph infection. All the Matt you can Stafford.
Nice.
Now, all I know
You
is...
thought about this.
Oh, I thought about this. You're going to really like, I hope both of you really appreciate this one. I really appreciate it. My wife is at least going to laugh at this one. In Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly happen. And that, my fair ladies, is how I know 9 other Matts would agree this Matt is in the top 10 Matts every time. It's your Find Your 9 Others, Mr. Matthew Stafford. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you very much. Right. That's brilliant.
All right. Matt number 3, apparently.
At least I'm not Matt number 2. I was called worse. You don't never want to be number 2.
Nothing like that silver medal. We're going with real Acker monsters, which I don't know if that 90s reference hits you, but I can go older. Ackerman, not to be confused with Mrs. Ackerman. She has a little pink bow in her head. That's how you know the difference. Also not Amy Man, but shout out to the double N's in your name. That's pretty cool. I can also go with Ack Daddy, as in Mac Daddy, and you can appreciate a Sir Mix-a-Lot joke, I think. Right?
Absolutely. Well, the Ack Dad will make you jump to bring crisscross for you.
Yeah. Please turn your clothes around backwards before we all the way get into this. I like big Matts, and I cannot lie. That's why we're here. Packing a Mac in the back of the Ackerman for this one. Big puns all intended. Former Mr. New Jersey Press Association Rookie of the Year, turned Chief Content Officer for Integrated Partners as of today. Takes center stage stir. It is Matt Ackerman. Welcome to the show.
Nice. And, I do have vanity plates that say Ack, so I will take that all the day. There was a super group called the Bens, so I consider this a super group called the Matts. We got, the super group, the Bens was what? Ben Foltz, Ben Lee, and Ben Queller. So,
there you go.
Exactly. I'm jumping into the nerdiness already, so I'm loving this.
This is what we're here to do. Now, I got to start with this. So first off, Matt Ackerman, Find Your None Others, big fan. There'll be a review of this one on the Cultish Creative channel coming soon. And we got center stage right here, Matt Ackerman. Great work right there. But this bookmark game here, this 9 Others bookmark game, and this thing, I'm going to read it. Your success requires the aid of others. I want to talk about this first because I know this just hits both of you in both of these books. And this is why we're here. This bookmark made it from Find Your 9 Others into center stage. And I was like, this is a show. This is a show right here.
Nice.
So Matthew Stafford, start us off. What Why does your success require the aid of others? What does that mean to you?
What does that mean to us? Well, it's all right. So we all want to be successful, right? And with 9 others, and there's a whole story like the beginning of it and why it was a little bit different when Katie, my co-founder, and I started this in 2011. But essentially, we're kind of saying, okay, we want to be successful. And in order to be successful, you're going to need help, right? You can't do these things on your own. And we reckoned the best way to get the most appropriate help was to be helpful, right? So, and it's remarkable how if you have that attitude of just being the helpful person and not really expecting anything in return, people just come and help you so much. So that was the whole thing. So it's like your success, you want to be successful, it's going to need the help of others, right? So then you've got to ask yourself, how are you going to get the help of others? And the best way to get help is to give lots more out. Simple as that.
Go ahead.
And I love,
what are you thinking about this?
I love that because that whole mindset of like, helpers help and, kind of that total givers give, when people sit there and are willing to kind of put themselves out there and, help without ulterior motives, they are the ones you want to do the same thing for. So man, I just love that mindset. It's exactly where I want to be, is that kind of mindset of if you give, you're going to get back tenfold. Definitely love that, Matt.
Stafford, tell them about just like what 9 Others is and what this concept is, because I think that way of setting up this table of, help without motives almost is really special in what you've created.
It's so good. So I started working with startups at the end of 2010, and throughout 2011, I was working, at an investor and trying to help lots of startups get investment. And this was kind of like at the beginning. Well, it was the beginning of over here in the UK, it was kind of the beginning of this latest wave of entrepreneurship, right? So 2010, 2011, nobody was a startup founder. It was a weird thing you'd do if you couldn't get a job. So that it really wasn't happening. But there were a few techie people in really scruffy offices in a cheap part of East London. And that's who we were working with. So we were working with these people because we thought, okay, if we can help them get investment, they will grow their companies, they'll employ people, they'll, create some wealth. Obviously heavily influenced by the West Coast, that'll get recycled and people will want to angel invest and all this kind of stuff. So that's the kind of work we were doing day to day. And the whole thing about, your success requires the aid of others. Sometimes what would happen back then is less prevalent now, thankfully. But what would happen back then is like, 2 people would chat, and if one of those people could help that person by introducing someone else, they kind of wouldn't do it unless there was something in it for them, right? They'd want to take a cut, they'd want to take a commission, a bit of a kickback, whatever it was. So they wouldn't make those things happen. And we just thought that was ridiculous. And like I say, influenced by the West Coast, more of a giving without expecting anything in return culture. We just got in there and just started helping people. And there's a few other bits of context behind that. Anyway, as part of our work in 2011, I thought, okay, to help these entrepreneurs get funding, let's find the very few venture capital firms and even fewer angel investors, and we'll run a dinner. We'll run a small dinner. So we'll curate who's there. So we'll invite some entrepreneurs who are starting startups that we know are, good enough to get funding, good enough to put in front of investors. And we'll invite some investors we know to hear these pitches. So the startups would pitch for a couple of minutes, and then we'd have a bit of Q&A, and then we'd move to the next one. And it was amazing. I mean, it was like off the chart successful. It was so fantastic. A lot of deals happened and a lot of investment was made as a result. So that was all great. And we ran those in 2011, and we, as Katie, my co-founder, and me, were part of that team. But what we noticed, there was something that really frustrated us. So at the end of every of these investor dinners, right, the startup founders would kind of huddle together in a corner and talk to each other. And it used to really annoy us because we'd got them there to talk to the investors and they weren't doing it. And we were like, you're missing a trick here. You're being stupid by talking amongst yourselves and not getting in front of the investors. But then it happened often enough, and not often enough of a few of these dinners, that we kind of tried to figure out what was going on. And what we realized was that the founders had kind of done their bit with the investors. They'd done their pitch, they'd answered the questions, they'd, swap business cards, whatever. And then what they were doing in the last 20, 30 minutes was talking to each other about the problems that they were facing. So, hiring and firing and, how to chase invoices, where to get office space from, all that kind of stuff. They were coming across these everyday business problems. So Katie and I thought, well, can we do something to help the founders, just the founders? And that's where that was kind of the genesis for 9 Others. And because we'd run these dinners, we thought, well, maybe we could just do some dinners just for founders. And we wanted to deliberately limit the number of people that were there. We wanted to loosely curate who was there. It was about getting quality people, not doing lots and lots and lots of dinners. We both had day jobs. I mean, we had to organize this on the side because we thought it was a good idea. So we picked kind of arbitrarily 10 people. So it's yourself and 9 others. And that's where the name comes from. So we ran the first one in December 2011, invited a bunch of people that would give us some feedback, said, okay, this is our challenge. We are thinking about doing these dinners just for entrepreneurs. This is like no investors. And people thought this was mad to try to do events where the founders wouldn't really get anything from it because they're going to come along and they're going to share their problems and they're going to try and help other people. So they're going to work at this thing. And it's only 10 people and they had to pay because they had to buy their ticket, which simply covers the cost of the dinner. So there are all these things that were just not really making sense to some smart people who were giving us this feedback. But we thought it was a good idea. So we put on a dinner and said, look, we're thinking about doing this. What do you reckon to these people around the table? So they gave us a bunch of feedback. Some of it clicked, some of it didn't. And then we did the second dinner, which was kind of like the first proper one, in the January of 2012. And, we put a ticket price on it. We found a nice restaurant that opened in the evening, nothing fancy, but in a, nice, wholesome food where we could share it around and sit around the table and talked about each person's problem and try to help them out. And I've done one a month ever since. So it's going to be 13 years this year. And it's just awesome. I mean, there's lots more I could say, but that was kind of the genesis of it. It was these founders coming up against the problems and us thinking, all right, how can we help? How can we create a network that'll help the network?
And Matt, it just makes so much sense because it's like, and we have it all the time with independent financial advisors where, first of all, none of these folks got into this to be business owners or employers. They had an idea and then they wanted to see it grow, and then it becomes this runaway train for them so often. And I'm really compelled by this because in addition to not being great business owners, so many, whether it be startups or independent advisors, feel very trapped on like what I call like kind of this desert island mentality where they don't have all the answers. They're sitting there and they're feeling like, what do I do here? And they're kind of trapped in their own head, trapped in this tiny office in New Jersey somewhere maybe. And they're just really trying to figure out, what am I missing? Because they don't know. Should I be using another kind of technology? What do you use for invoicing you were talking about? What do you use for this tool? And having like good people to bounce things off of, man, that's really what gets me up every day to help folks integrate it. Is so much about like, man, I love getting on the phone with our advisors and they're struggling with some stuff big and small. And then how can we help provide them the answers? The good news about what you're doing though, is you're bringing in 9 people that have a lot of different points of view. So, it's really cool. That's just awesome.
Ackerman, say for a second, just explain what you do at Integrated, just real quick. So Matt has context.
Sure. So at Integrated, I'm our chief content officer, which really, it was interesting. My wife asked my boss at a dinner, she was like, can you explain to me what Matt's job is? Which, by the way, you never want your wife asking your boss what your job is, because that means like nobody really knows. And my boss said, Matt's a connector. He's really good at getting people that somebody needs something, he knows somebody that can help provide the answer in this space. My job on paper says chief content officer. So a lot of that means I help our advisors to write blogs, create video, podcasts, but so much more of it is getting them to figure out their message, figure out their brand, identify their story, and really helping it to shine. Advisors are very good at, what they're good at, which is helping their clients, but they're not very good at being marketers. They're not very good at telling their story. And I have the pleasure of working with over 200 advisors nationally to help them tell their story in kind of a unique and different way. I tell people I have the fun job anywhere I go, because while they're focused on, really intricate things with their clients and things like that, I get to, figure out how am I going to lead this story with a fun analogy that's going to make something that sometimes seems tedious into something fun.
Fantastic.
This idea of, and I know this is I definitely know this is a US expression. I'm really curious if it's a British expression, is like the desert island jukebox game. Is that universal?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Stafford, go ahead, Ackerman.
Do you mean, well, there's something over here, desert island discs, but that might be completely unrelated.
Yes. Yep.
Well, is that like what would you take if you were on a desert island and you could only take one thing or three things? Is that a game you guys play?
No, it's a radio program, and I think it started in like the 40s or the 50s. And desert island discs, the discs are records. So it's an interview where you're allowed to take 8 discs, 8 records, 8 tracks on this desert island, and you kind of talk through your life as to why you picked each track. But then at the end, you're given the complete works of Shakespeare, the Bible, or whichever religious text you want, and you're allowed to take one luxury. And it's kind of like a fantasy island, obviously. So people take, you go to this desert island and people take, like a power shower or endless fluffy towels and, random things like that. It can't be anything useful or practical.
That's amazing.
So that's what made me think of that. And I'm a big fan. Desert Island Disc is amazing.
Love it.
It's been going for the odd years, and there's an amazing archive.
That's where I was going too. I've always been a listener, and I've loved that concept of like, okay. And we had this discussion, my soon to be 13-year-old, in the car all the time. Okay. If you could only bring this many albums with you, what would you want them to be? And what do they really say about you when you want to find those kind of tracks and things like that? Your luxury item, though, I always think about what my luxury item would be. If I could get like a new t-shirt and a new pair of socks every day, and I was throwing the other away, that I think would be, that would definitely be where I would go.
That's a good one. Yeah. I kind of think I try to cheat the system.
You're bringing a satellite phone. He's bringing a satellite phone.
Well, not really. So I would love a concert grand piano with paper and a pen, but I can also use the paper and a pen to draw and sketch. So I'd love to do both of those things. So I think if I get the piano and the manuscript paper, then I could use that to draw, which is a bit of a cheat, but I think I'd be allowed when I'm famous enough.
It's interesting because if you look at that, it's so interesting about personalities. He's creating something new and amazing. Me, I just want to be comfortable in dry socks.
Yeah, but you don't have to tune a piano on a desert island.
No.
Without a maintenance plan.
Sand in the keys.
It'll always be in tune and it'll always be clean. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it's a magical piano. I get this.
Exactly.
So this is wild. I don't think so. I feel like I've heard that because of the luxury item thing. You just triggered a weird thing, but I don't know if I've ever even heard. I need to go find the source material now.
Yes,
you must.
I wanted to know what I wanted to know what your Desert Island Discs would be. I want to know the 3 albums you're bringing to a Desert Island. I bring it down from 8 to 3 because just for programming length here.
Well,
Stafford.
all right, we're coming back to Desert Island picks in a second because and maybe this is at the core of it because I'm kind of curious with both of you. So because Stafford, you were talking about this whole thing of like how you curate the people in these events, and then Ackerman, you brought up like how you connect the people to each other. And I feel like before you get to curate or connect, you have to collect these things.
Nice 3 C's. Who doesn't want alliteration?
Who doesn't want alliteration? Stafford, first, like just the idea of like collecting people and ideas. Is this intentional? Is this default hardwired programming in your life?
I think I've discovered that's the way my mind works. So I never used to really think that having a network was a thing. Like early in my career, it was always a bit naff, and networking is a bit naff. And like collecting business cards, it's just like, oh, the people that did that, they were just there for what they could take out of it. And it just felt wrong. But then, when I started working for this investor and started working for startups and meeting these kind of, these founders that think differently and are doing new things and getting exposed to US startups and, people in San Francisco and such, like, being inspired by that, I think it started to fall into place. And, my day job was finding startups that might want investment. So that was a lot of networking. So, 3 or 4 nights a week after work, I would be going to, a beer and pizza networking event where, some of them were just awful. Some of them were really good. Startups might pitch, you might get hit up by a lawyer or an accountant kind of wanting to sell you something, all these mix of things, but we just had to go out and do it. And I was going out and doing this 3-4 times a week. And I suppose that was the collecting bit. Because you're kind of filtering through people, seeing if the day job can help. And I was doing that for about 18 months before I started 9 Others. So starting 9 Others, that was, I guess that was the beginning of a bit more curation, because I wanted people that were going to contribute. And if I got the sense that someone was just going to come along for what they could take, or if they just weren't in the right place, right, they weren't going to share a challenge and all that sort of stuff, then they wouldn't get invited. And, oneself and 9 others. So there are 10 seats. One of those is mine. Another is Katie's, my co-founder. So we really have to find 8 people. And we do around 1 a month. So, it was never really a problem finding the right people. It was just more important to, get the first few signed up. And then we'd think about, okay, so from those first few, who might they want to meet, or who might want to meet them? And then, you could kind of do it from there. And then all of a sudden you go to the dinner and we'd sit 2 people next to each other, and as if by magic, they could collaborate or they could help each other, or they were doing similar things or contrasting things. And, it was just super.
So it's so interesting because collecting people and building a network is taken for granted by people like Matt Stafford, who are good at that. But it's some folks, whether we're talking about introverts or people that are good at something else, it's a struggle to build a network of not just, a network at all, is hard to build. It was interesting. Before we were recording today, I was speaking at a panel at the Financial Planning Association conference in Columbus, Ohio. And it was fascinating because we're literally talking to financial advisors and explaining to them, like, here's how you connect with the media. Here's how you connect with this person. Hey, if you need somebody because you want to record a podcast, I have people that you can connect with. They're writing down and jotting down names. And you're like, it's things you take for granted, Matt, as somebody that has a great network. And building a network is, Matt, you got it down to a science, but there is a real art to this as well. And so much of it is personality. I say to people all the time, it's like, and I guess I take it back to what you said first, which is that helper's mentality that you have, where helpers help people. So people want to help you. They want to get into that meeting. They want to be one of your 9 or 8, excuse me. So I think so much of it is about the kind of people that you want to be. You want to be the people that other people want in their network. And I think you've done probably just a great job at it. And, you take it for granted. And,
thank you. That's very kind, but thank you. But I did have to work at it as well, quite a lot. I'm definitely on the introverted side. So, very, very much into the introverted side of things. It takes a lot out of me doing these dinners and those networking events that I used to go to. And, between the 3 of us, I used to go into some and I would just not be feeling it. And I'd just spin around and walk out because I was just too anxious about it all. But then I knew it would be, the reward was worth the price. So I had to keep working at it. And this is, a dozen or so years ago now. So yeah, I did have to keep working at it. And now, Nine Others just gives everything. It's given so much, but it took a long time. So I'm always a bit, people think, oh, I must be some sort of, extrovert that can work a room, with no problems at all. It's not always the case. So I think there's hope for introverts and people more introverted than I am.
And I am an extrovert. I do gain energy from being around others, but it all takes work. Anything takes work. And I think, working the room is a skill set unto itself, and, and working it in a smart way too. How do you glide people in and out of these conversations so you don't just get stuck having the one conversation with the person who happens to be next to you for that whole night? Like, that is what fascinates me about this, because we've all been stuck in a bad conversation too,
I don't find that very natural. So I've got to nearly almost prep myself, like remind myself, have a little word with myself before I go into these things, to think, oh, right, if I'm in a conversation that, I've been in too long, or I want to duck out of, I've got to get the lines in my head so I can talk and I can say them, and then I can sort of extract myself. I've got to have a little pep talk with myself before I go in.
Wait, what's the best tactic? Do you have a good tactic? Ackerman, give me the tactic for getting out of a crap conversation.
So sometimes I will introduce them to someone else. Oh, who you should meet is this person, and kind of guide them into that.
I will do
the
classic voiced.
Yes. Like, so you're extracting yourself without making that person, like, you don't ever want to do you don't want to be the blackjack dealer in Vegas where you're like, okay, I'm out and goodbye. Like, you can't do that. So you have to have a really smart way to kind of introduce them to somebody else and slide out. Matt Stafford, what do you use to,
That's a great one. And which I've used that as well. I guess another, I would say to people, sort of when you just about feel it's the right time that it's going to be time to get out, you just got to take your chance, because sometimes there can be lots of people talking, or you feel like you have to say something, and everyone can feel that kind of energy go when it's too long.
Yes.
So if you get the sense where, okay, I am going to be the blackjack dealer and duck out, you don't do it quite so abruptly, but It's like, oh, great. Look, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for sharing whatever they did. I'm just going to go and have I'm just going to go and mingle with some other people.
Right. It's hard because, I love a good Irish goodbye. Where'd Matt go? So that's my favorite way to leave a party, is a good Irish goodbye. But at conferences and events where you're networking, the person that drives me the craziest is the person who's looking over your shoulder as you're talking, looking for somebody cooler to talk to. And especially as you're networking and you're in these environments where you're just meeting people, you have to so artfully, every conversation has to be the most important conversation. And especially as you lose energy, one of the best pieces of advice that I was ever told by a public speaking coach was, as your energy wanes in those moments, taking a breath through your nose and make sure you're looking directly between their eyebrows. And it'll lock you in for a moment so that you don't lose track of yourself as they're talking or sharing. So that's like as my brain starts to wander, because we're all creative. So you're already thinking about something else in your head. You have to make sure you're locked in on those moments so you don't look like, I'm looking for somebody else at this party. You have to really lock in.
So true. That's so true.
What do you think, Ackerman, about being because I'm convinced too, some of it is just some people are just bad conversationalists.
True.
So how do you think about what's like advice for being a good conversationalist in like a networking setting where you're not overbearing so that somebody's inclined to do the over the head thing or like try to get out of it? What would you say are tips for that?
So I always say, find one thing in that conversation you can learn here. Everyone has one thing, and make sure you're asking more questions than just talking. If you in your head go, man, I've been talking for a while, you probably have. I think that's especially true, not just in networking settings, but if you're on a podcast, if you're doing a video, if you and your brain are like, man, I've been talking for a while. Yes, you probably have. I say people with video too. Cause I spent a lot of my career creating video content, and I would say to people before we started, look, I'm trying to build a video that's about 3 minutes long. It's going to be better if you and I have a question and answer for 3 or 4 questions. So if you're talking for more than 30, 45 seconds, it's too long. So I always find that kind of stuff out. But in a networking environment, make sure that you're listening, you're asking good follow-up questions, and you're engaged. If you're not those things, then they can feel that energy too. You have one chance to bring your energy, bring a first impression. And if you fumble it, you're not getting another chance.
What do you think about that, Stafford? Any advice for being a good conversationalist in a networking
It's
setting?
great. It's great. I mean, sometimes these things just flow naturally and you kind of spark off one another. If not, I would say, get curious and just, as you were saying, Ackerman as well, like have better questions and just get a bit curious and say, oh, why is that? Oh, what made you think that? There's just those kind of little things can make people open up a bit. So better questions, get curious. And if you think of it with if you go into networking situations with a curious mind, sure, you want to be interesting, having, your own things to talk about, but you want to be interested. So if you're interested in others and you have that curious mindset, it'll help conversations flow.
I like that the Brit just Ted Lassoed us with the be curious, not judgmental. So I'm liking that.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Oh, Ted Lasso, the Apple series with
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
It's a football coach who becomes a soccer coach in Britain. It's wonderful. It's on Apple.
Okay.
You'd really enjoy it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll give the 2 Matt seal of approval on.
All right, I'll check it
out. It's a bingeable series. We'll put it that way.
It feels like those old Trident says 2 out of 3 dentists agree. So 2 out of 3 Matts, give it 2 thumbs up.
Fantastic. Oh, you got fireworks going too.
I wonder how I got fireworks. What just happened? If you give thumbs up to the screen, apparently you get fireworks. So that was
let's try.
Nice. Did you get fireworks? No,
I didn't get them either. I think it's a phone thing. That's amazing.
Nice.
That's okay. Somebody else was doing one of these on an iPad recently, and every time she moved her hand, like there was this magic, like Mickey Mouse bubble thumbs up that would appear. It was pretty amazing. It was really cool. So the technology, I'm amazed at this and what you just said, Stafford, about something I say all the time is you have to make curiosity a habit. Like curiosity on its own is not just ADHD in the world. Like sometimes the spark is there, but sometimes it's not. So you have to like habitualize this thing. Did you have to do that yourself, or you got a million books behind you? I feel like you're just a naturally curious person. Have you ever thought about the habitual side of curiosity?
I mean, I like connecting. I think that's something that's been there from the start of certainly before 9 Others. I really like connecting people. So Ackerman, when you said earlier on about kind of getting yourself out of conversation, if you can like introduce, oh, you should talk to this person I just talked to. I would do a lot of that in the 18 months before starting 9 Others. And then even thinking, longer ago at school, I used to know everybody. So I was never like, I don't know, that cool or trendy or anything, but I would always kind of know who was who. And, my friends would like, how do you know that person? How the hell do you know that person? Because I'm so quiet and I wasn't very outgoing or anything like that. But I kind of like just knew. And I think that's how my mind works. It's like those connectors and seeing how people can connect together. So I think maybe that's always there. But yeah, I mean, I try to read a ton of books, as you can see behind me, and always, I want to be, what I really, really find interesting more and more and never want to stop is just the curiosity about human nature. What makes us tick? And it's all these little signals. And I just find it fascinating. Like there's not one thing, somebody can be great at something and terrible at something else. And you can switch those around in different people, but they're both incredibly successful, right? So it's just how these multiple things fit together. And I think I'm super curious about human nature. And a new word to me a couple of years ago now was quiddity. And quiddity means, the very essence of something. And I think that's my favorite word at the minute, is like understanding quiddity. So what makes something tick? And I think that must take a bit of my curiosity.
And I thought quiddity had something to do with Hogwarts. So, I've learned something new today already. So very excited about that.
Ackerman, what about you? Were you I have a hunch that like all three of us were social interlopers in the
Mhm.
high school and before years. Was this you
Oh
too?
yeah.
Were you wandering with all the different social groups?
Oh yeah. I had an ability that I think likability helps in that sense, and also having a good sense of humor helps with that. That you just kind of can glide into any group, and that starts when you're younger. Listen, I wasn't ever the most talented. I could never excel on an athletic field or anything. I think one of the important things, and I say this to people all the time with kids, is like get your kid on a stage as early as you possibly can so that they will not have that fear and they can then talk to anybody because they've just talked to a room that's, a packed auditorium in grade school or high school and you've performed. And when you can do that, then you can kind of glide in and out of these groups. You have a sting, but at the same time, then it's not scary. I always say to people, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's the worst thing that happens if you walk in and start a conversation that falters? Or Stafford, what happens if you walk in and this evening's meeting didn't go as well, or this pizza out with startups didn't go as well? It's never what's the worst thing that happens. So I have to admit I tried at one point to launch a video kind of startup idea that I had. I wanted to go out. I wanted to make documentaries. It didn't work. It didn't work. What was the worst thing that happened? I learned a whole bunch. I learned a whole bunch about the people that I would one day want to work with. I learned a whole bunch about where my skill set was, and I learned where I faltered too. So I think that sometimes we all want success to happen immediately, but the truth of the matter is we got to fail sometimes our way up to success. And it's always good to learn from that mistake and try again. So sometimes it's sometimes when you fall on your face early in life, as you interlope from conversation to conversation, or as you fall on your face on a stage in front of a whole bunch of people, I, I'll be honest with you, junior year of high school, I went up on a stage and tried to sing Teach Your Children by Crosby, Stills and Nash, and I did not hit the notes I should have. Bobby Kwok didn't either. So as a result, it was not a great experience. But what did I learn from that is, man, I was a great MC that night at PopCert. And really, that's what it's all about, is finding your lane and being great in there too. I've shared a lot of things already on this podcast that I don't usually share on most podcasts, guys. It's because there's so many Macs. That's really what it's about.
With a lot of comfort interloping between
It is. It is. It's that interloping with Mats, and now I've shared about singing in high school in 1993. So that we're really learning a lot.
I'm not going to ask you to sing on this podcast, so I
You
think
shouldn't.
you're safe.
You shouldn't.
Stafford, what about the failure part of that? What he just said, failing up over time, or just that?
I mean, yeah, I failed a bunch of times at lots of things. I don't like it.
It sucks.
I don't like it either.
Every
like
time
either.
it sucks.
But I think I think
do you find that with startups, Matt, that they understand that they've got to kind of fail their way sometimes to success, or are they expecting that instant, I'm going to win every time? Do they have that kind of,
Oh no, I think you just got to do something. I think perfection is just an excuse not to do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're waiting for things to be perfect. And, over the last decade or so, I've definitely learned. And I love that going from nothing to one. I love that going from, there's absolutely nothing. What can we do to get to that first step? Because you can always do something with what you've got right now. And I think I've seen a lot of startups sort of think, oh, if only I have this funding, then I can do this. Or if I have a technical co-founder, then I can do this. And it's like, that's just an excuse, right? That you're just waiting for, I don't know, some kind of perfection, and then you'll be able to do something. That's nonsense. You can always do something with what you've got now, just to take a first step. In the early days, we'd have people who, they couldn't launch their business because they didn't know how to make a website. Well, you just got to do it. You got to have a go, or not, instead, if you can't have an all singing, all dancing website, well, launch a newsletter. A lot of people think, okay, I've got this great idea for a business, but it'll only work when I've got 1 million users and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no. They have to take a step. And some people do, and some people just don't. And I think it's a good filtering for whether you really want to do the idea. If we're talking about startups, like before I started working for that investor, I was trying to do all sorts of stuff. I was importing things from China. I was trying to send things to Africa. had all sorts of ideas, and none of it worked. I mean, it was just a disaster for months and months and months. None of it worked. And some of the stuff, I was going to go and start a coffee business with a friend who was from Kenya, and we could get coffee over here, and then we'd sell it. But we just never did anything. We kept making excuses of the type I've just described. But then when it came to thinking about 9 others, Katie and I would meet in a coffee shop at 5 to 7 in the morning so that we would have a good hour and a half of 9 others chat before we had to go to the day job. And it was like, okay, that was easy. That was a pleasure. That was great to get out of bed at, 5:30 a.m. to get into London for 5 to 7. So it was like, okay, well, that's a good filter for this thing. I must really want to do it. So yeah, you got to be willing to fail. But then you've also got to recognize if you're not, if you're coming up with excuses, then maybe it's not the thing you're meant to do.
Excuses are like belly buttons. That's what I tell my kids all the time. Everybody's got them. They're full of lint or something. I clean that up because I have kids, Matt, so I don't, let's just use the other one. But
I appreciate it. Yeah, belly buttons.
It's a family audience here, so I don't want to mess. It's a family show.
It is. It's a Disney G though.
Nice.
The occasional parent goes out. It's just part of the plot line. It's fine. Is that indication of the thing that you're actually doing on the track? And Ackerman, you take this first. Like that whole because there's something special about when you start to do something and then it just happens and it feels right. And I think we overlook this, and it goes back to something I think you actually brought up before, Ackerman, too, about just it's about your personality. It's kind of being like, oh, this is my lane. Importing coffee from Kenya wasn't the thing to do, but drinking Kenyan coffee and talking about this other idea just feels right. I feel like trusting that gut when it's something that's new or different is something you almost have to learn that. What do you think?
It is a learned habit, but great leaders, one thing I find in common with them is a personality that other people want to follow them. Other people want to get engaged and join them. Other people, and I'm really curious if this happens in those startups, especially the early days, when you're starting something, there's so much trust that goes into that. They have to believe that you're the right leader for this. You're the right person to take them into this, especially if it's a new idea. And they've got to be a little bit competitive. I find they have to kind of want to show you they can succeed. When I'm thinking back to a time when I was at Investment News at the time, and we were developing a video and multimedia platform there. They had never done anything like this before. And the attitude from everyone was, it just doesn't work. We're never going to sell it. Nobody's going to buy it. And I had F you, I'll show you mindset with myself. And I had great people around me that bought into that kind of leadership and that kind of energy. And you just go out and you grow and build something because you believe in it, even if no one else does that are around. But you have enough people that are working with you that you can progress it forward. Like that mindset of I'll show you and competitiveness, plus a general upbeat personality of we're all in this together for the people that you're bonded with. To me, that to me is the secret of good leadership and success, when things don't seem like it's going to go right. But you're right. You start to feel when the things are right. But sometimes to get that ball rolling, you got to get rid of the excuses. You got to try something, be willing to fail, and you've got to kind of throw yourself into it and say, I'm competitive. F you, I'll show you.
What do you think about that, Stafford?
I was thinking at the beginning, it's got to be like the trusting your gut. You've got to trust your gut, but you got to figure out how to interpret that. I think what I found is, some things will feel right, some things won't, but you might not be able to, or certainly I'm not able to like rationalize that or put that into words for some time. You'll just get this sense that it's not going in the right direction, or it's not, people aren't coming with you, or you're not fully bought into it, or you are. And I think that's something that, that I've really realized over the last few years as well. You listen to your gut. You've got to listen to your gut, but you've got to realize that you might not be able to justify that or rationalize that to other people for quite some time. And it might take a couple of days, or it might take going for a walk or going for a run or whatever. And then it'll suddenly click and be like, that's the reason why it didn't feel right. It was because of such and such. And we've, I've used that a lot. And with regards to 9 others, we have a completely arbitrary 65% rule. So we meet, like we were talking about earlier on, collecting all these people. So you go around and you meet all these people and you're kind of curating who might come and who might not. And if I meet someone and I think, 65% of me is sure that this person will come along, contribute, share their challenge and all the rest of it, then great. They can get an invite to a 9 others. And then they got to sign up and they got to buy their ticket and they got to show up and everything. But we kind of figured, all right, if we're kind of borderline, give people the benefit of the doubt and go with it. But on the reverse as well, if we get a sense that someone, they're just not right, or maybe they're just not in the right headspace, or they just haven't quite got there yet, then we'll, we won't invite them just yet.
I love that so much. It reminds me of the idea that maybe is closer to yes than it is to no. And it's kind of like that gut instinct of like, maybe this is the right person is a stronger signal than like, no, this is definitely not the right person, even if it's not the 100% yes yet. That maybe tilt.
Maybe is closer to yes than no, unless I'm saying, I'm giving an idea to my wife about something I want to do that weekend. How can we go down to Baltimore and see the Orioles game? Maybe. That means no. There's definitely not going to happen.
Yeah.
No. Maybe.
There's strategic negotiation tactics inside of
100%. And when you ask is very important too. Anyway, that tangents. By the way, my brain, as we've had this conversation, is going, which Jason was that in Ted Lasso? Jason Sudeikis, for anybody that was curious. That's what's been going on in the back of my head as we've been having this conversation too.
That's okay. I'm panicking through my 3 desert discs, and you've got Jason Sudeikis on your mind. So we'll come back. We'll bring it back to all these things. I got to ask this question though, because it came up before, and this is my ADHD brain on this one. Speaking of failures, like very first websites, do any of your very first websites still exist? Not trying to oust any totally embarrassing things.
Oh God. Are they gone? Like what happens? Like there's had to be,
I know
hanging out
in the pandemic, I found an Angel Fire page from the 90s. I don't know if it's still there. I'm going to try to find it after this, but it was like a early high school band that I had, and like our Angel Fire page, like the first website we ever had.
I want to find this.
It's gloriously awful. So if I can find it, I will gladly share it.
I found a blog that I was trying to write when I was coaching a baseball team in like 2008. And it was like, I made like 2 entries into it. And I was like, man, I wonder why I just stopped. And like the writing was mediocre and like, it's out there and it was bad.
Stafford, you got one of these?
If we're confessing, so I was in my second year of a computer science degree, and I didn't know how to make a website. And for people that know computer science, maybe that doesn't come as too much of a surprise. But I was in my second year, and I went to one of the staff and said, like, how do I make a website? Like, what do I actually do? Because when you look at it and it's got, whatever.com, like, how does that work? Where are the words? Where's the file? And I just didn't know. And they were like, oh, well, it's got to have an index.html file and you've got to put this in a certain place. And I was like, And I was in my second year of a computer science degree.
This is the way it goes. What was your first website?
I think I was just, because I was at university, I could get some server space at university. And it was like because all the academics had basically an about me type page.
Sure.
So I found some space and just put a, hello world type thing together.
It's a wonderful thing to put yourself out there for the first time.
Yeah. And then it was great. And then in my third year, for my final year project, created a proper website, which was like an adaptive test, which was super.
That's awesome.
So he took a year to go from 0 to super. I'm hoping I reach super at some point. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm at 0 to 0.1. I think in my website building skills, you know.
Okay. I'm mediocre at best at this point.
I'd go back to Angel Fire. I'm just saying, if they hit me up again and said, come to my sweet loving arms, I'd do it.
Well, what was the name of the band?
Oh, this is top secret information. We'll talk about it. No, it's not.
Oh.
That band was 8 Ounce Joe, as in an 8 ounce cup of coffee. Claim to fame once having a place in, I think, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, a coffee shop we used to play at. That actually had an 8 Ounce Joe on the menu, gave us the honorary. You have a menu item.
Nice. That's always my dream, to have like a consistent menu item at a place where it's named after me. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, here's the Ackerman sandwich. He came here every day and got the same sandwich.
What would be on the Ackerman sandwich? Just curious.
Man, the Ackerman sandwich, I'm thinking is probably like some sort of like brisket, some sort of melted cheese, pepper jack, I think we're going to go with here. And then like maybe a barbecue sauce, I think would be really good on the Ackerman.
So like a brisket barbecue sandwich, you're saying?
Exactly. It'd be fantastic.
Stafford food item of choice, if it was named after you on a menu, where are you going with this?
It would probably be very spicy or very stinky cheese.
Nice.
Okay. Very French cheese or something really spicy.
Which is a unique combination, because as I well know from my brother who lives in France and has to basically import his Frank's hot sauce to be a proper American in France. What do you like? Is the spicy palate, what are we talking? Like Indian spicy? What's the spicy palate?
Oh yeah. Full on. But I've worked my way up over the last 20 years. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. We're going to do this before we get to summary points. I do want to just touch on the Desert Island Discs thing, since you invoked it. I don't want to put anybody painfully on the spot, but Ackerman, like, I feel like you've probably thought about this 100 times. Do you have?
I have.
Go give me at least 3.
I have.
Let's give me something.
Okay, so there's got to be a Beatles in there, and I'm going to go with Abbey Road. Sometimes I fluctuate between that and the White Album. The White Album is longer. The Abbey Road is just perfect in terms of beginning to end. Well done. And I think it speaks to, for me, the fact that having somebody who will edit you a little bit makes you better. George Martin made the Beatles better. That's why I love Abbey Road. Although Rubber Soul is also a fantastic album. I don't want just Beatles albums. So then I reach out from there. Next, I'm going with a Weezer album, and I'm going to go with Pinkerton. Pinkerton, I believe, beginning to end is a fantastic Weezer album. Many will go Blue. But I think I'm more impressed by any band's second album than the first. You spend your whole life building your first album. Your second album is where you learn about people, because they have to create it in the span of, you've created the first album, we're touring on it, now I need that second album. So I think when bands have great second albums, it indicates there's something really incredible there. The third album I'm going to go with, I really feel that I need a Pearl Jam album here, and I'm going to go with No Code, which I think it was either that or Vitology, but I'm going to go No Code. I actually just saw Pearl Jam at Fenway on Sunday. They are still doing it after 30 years. And to me, this is all about longevity. It's all about having anybody that can have that kind of longevity after a grunge era that saw so many artists fall out of things. When you need to have a band that can do that. And again, first album, it's easy. 10 is their entire lifetime, through all their different iterations, Mookie Blaylock, et cetera. And for me, No Code comes out in 96, or 95 or 96, right as they're in their fight with Ticketmaster, and they still produce an album that beginning to end. It's a fantastic album. And those would be my 3 for my 3 Desert Island Discs.
That's a great 3. That's very respectable. I want your Desert Island 3.
Nice.
Stafford, are you prepared to take this challenge, or is this?
Oh man, I've thought about this so much, and I still think I'm going to do something significant enough to get on the real Desert Island Discs. So give it some time. So Desert Island Discs, it's like the individual tracks, so it's not albums.
So he's going to go songs. Okay.
You got to pick 8 songs. I think I would have to. I mean, look, it changes like the wind, but there would be. Earliest, there'd be some Kinks in there, probably Death of a Clown. They'd have to have a Beatles song in there, but I don't know not sure if I can pick one right now. Beach Boys, God only knows, probably.
That's what I was thinking of. I love it when I'm on track with you here.
And then, I mean, I have to have some just piano. There is something about the piano that just does it for me. So,
where are you going?
like Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody, a Chopin something or another, Chopin waltz of one kind or another. And then there's this. I remember years ago, I had a really good job. It was like my best paying job at the time, and I was in my early 20s, and I felt like I had so much money. And I went into the music store and bought like 10 CDs, and I didn't even know like what they were. And one of the ones I picked up was this Cuban pianist called Ruben Gonzalez.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it was like the Buena Vista Social Club.
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
I picked up one of those, and there's a track on that. I think it's called Como Siento Yo, and it is incredibly difficult. But if I was stuck on the island, I would get my luxury concert grand and try to figure out how to play that. It would.
I once got 10 CDs too. It was through Columbia House for a penny. So that's how we did it here in the United States. Yes, what a deal. That was the 90s. Anyway, sorry, Matt, for your
No. Hard plug. If you haven't watched have you seen the Chucho Valdez Tiny Desk that just came out not long before at least this recording?
I haven't seen that one yet.
One of my favorite Afro-Cuban jazz piano players. Saw him live. The great experience. I will bestow. I love that list, for the record. That is outstanding. And I really love the I mean, you got God Only Knows and List potentially next to each other, which just makes me more happy than I can possibly express. Yeah. Watch the Chucho Valdez Tiny Desk. It will give you that Ruben Gonzalez times like a million. I have often described Chucho Valdez's music, especially his solo piano work. The work with his dad is also really cool to see if you can find videos of that live. But he plays the way I feel like the ADHD in my brain functions, which is he's like interspersing these folk songs and jazz standards and classical compositions in a way. Him and Brad Meldau are the two people where I'm like, you play my ADHD. And I don't know how else to put it, except that you just keep bobbing and weaving in ways that are delightful surprises every time, and I love it.
I've written that down. I will look it up.
Nice.
My 3, and I'm going to veer off the rock route, and it pains me because with only 3, and I went albums as I was thinking about this. I'll veer a little bit off of it. So I got to start with, and this was a toss up between A Love Supreme and something else. I think I need I need that mid 50s to like late 60s jazz era. That's just one of my happiest places. So I think I'm going Horace Silver, Blowing the Blues Away, because that is like the gamut of hard bop to like there's ballads on there, pieces on there, and some other ones. That's just one of those things you discover, and then I can't get away from that album. It just keeps coming back in my life over and over again for decades. Shout out to Horace Silver and that whole band. That's a great band. Ramones, which in a weird way I feel like are my Beatles. I think I'm going Rocket to Russia. Okay. I think that's where I'm going, but that's a really hard thing. If I can't have a Ramones best of, I think I'm going Rocket to Russia. And then, man, shout out Pinkerton, like that, oh God, you know my feelings there. And then I gotta have something with like real lyrics. So I'm going Supreme Clientele. I gotta have some Ghostface. I need to be hit occasionally with the word salad and just the creativity of, this rap is like ZD or something like that, and be like, of course. Yeah. Of course. If I'm on a desert.
Well, I'm amazed. I forgive me. I should have included some 8-ounce Joe in my selection.
Nice. Yeah.
I've got their Angel Fire open right here, and you can go see them right now in Pennsylvania if you'd like. If this was,
1996. Yeah.
Yes.
You're right on time. You're right on time. That venue has since been demolished, by the way, but it's a lovely parking lot now. It was a historic hotel. I've got some notes. I want to go through a couple of these, and I just want you to, weigh in at any of these points, because my God, we said a lot of really cool things on this. We started off, and Stafford, you were talking about this, to get help, be helpful. And Ackerman, you added in without motive. I love that so much, because like if your only motive is actually to be helpful and not to extract something, it reminds me of this idea. You can't take something off a table unless you put something onto it first. And if you approach everything as putting it on first, go ahead. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's definitely one of my big takeaways, Stafford, too, is this whole mindset of helping. And really, I really do believe that when you help just to help, you get back tenfold. And I think definitely one of my takeaways here is like that. And my belief is it can't be faked. If you're a helper and that's your mindset, givers get. And if you have that helper's mindset, it always comes back tenfold.
Ackerman, you got to say one more thing about this too. Actually, I'm going to say this next idea. I want you to answer it, connecting it to this, because I can't leave this on the table in this conversation. I'm giving you 5 C's, okay, not just 3 C's, because I wrote down collect, curate, connect, but then like that's how you compound curiosity.
Compound
That's
curiosity.
the thing.
Like,
You got to compound curiosity as to keep coming back. Can you, respond to that to whatever degree you want to, but you have to tell Mr. Stafford about PorchFest, which is not your 9 others, but for some reason you are collecting, curating, and connecting a whole community in the coolest way. Tell them what PorchFest is.
So what most people don't know about me that only know me from this wealth management sphere is I love to volunteer. We're talking about helper's mindset. I've been a coach in my area, baseball and basketball, for 30 years. But because of this helper's mindset, when I come up with ideas, I get to do them in my little town here in New Jersey. And one of the ideas was this idea that I had of PorchFest, which is we put bands on people's porches throughout town. And it became like a literally walking tour of all these great porches in town, but also great music that was spread all over town. So we did the first year in November. We had 7 porches and 13 bands. We did it again in June, and we had 27 bands on 13 porches. So it's just an amazing day in town. It gets the whole community together. I'm going to give you another C, and that's you need champions. You need people that are going to champion a cause and lead it. And that when you compound the curiosity, when you bring people together, when you get creative ideas and you get champions that are leading the way, great things happen. And PorchFest is such a great day in town because they literally block off streets. People are having block parties. We put bands on porches. It's all free. And man, has it just been a fun event for this town. And you know what you're saying? People are always curious of what your ulterior motive is. Like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, I just thought it would be a fun thing to do. Like I have one son who's super athletic and another son who's very artsy, and I want to support them both. And I want my son that's my theater kid to know that like there's so many other great artists out there and great musicians, and let's give them a stage. And sometimes a stage doesn't need to be a stage. It can be somebody's porch.
Have you ever heard anything like that, Stafford?
Brilliant. Oh, I love it. It sounds so good. So many things I'm thinking of.
We should do one of these 9, we should bring 9 people to different porches. That's what we'll do. We'll walk them around town. We'll have different porches for different reasons.
Well, you have the 9 others dinner on every porch.
Exactly. That'd be fun.
Play the music while the dinner's happening, or the musicians can join the dinner as well.
Perfect.
Something like that.
I love it.
Yeah, a friend of mine says that his term for what we were doing with 9 others and what he does as well is compounding goodwill. And I think that's a great way to think of it. But he also, the same guy, says that he is long-term greedy, which I think is another good phrase. It's like, look, we're doing it just for the pleasure of contributing and being curious and all those things we had. And we thought about this at the start of 9 others as well. Well, like, look, if as I said right at the beginning, sometimes people wouldn't make those connections because they weren't getting a kickback. And Katie and I just thought, well, if we do make those connections, a couple of things are going to happen. If we keep making those connections, the guaranteed result is we're going to miss out on a ton of stuff. So I think from day one, we knew that, look, we keep making these connections. Some people will go up and make millions. We're going to miss out. And that's great. That's absolutely fine. We were kind of bought into the missing out at the beginning because we just knew it'd be the right thing to do to keep making those connections. But we also thought, and this is the long-term greedy thing, I guess, is like, look, if we keep doing this, surely it would be a bit weird if nothing came back. And even if it was weird and absolutely nothing came back from us making all these connections and compounding all this goodwill, oh well, at least we had a good few dinners in amongst it. And I think that was our idea from the start as well, is like, look, you know, there probably will be something unpredictable that might come back to us. But as long as we enjoy the doing of it in the meantime, sort of doesn't matter.
That's amazing, because it's kind of like this thing of the champion's idea, Ackerman's contribution to the C's here, but also this idea of good leaders find people who want to follow them. And that's kind of what you're doing, not follow me to your exit, follow me to the next thing that you're going to invent for your business or whatever. You're just like, no, just follow me for this part of the path and see what happens. Not to be your leader forever. 0 to 1. You can handle 1 to 1,000,000.
Yeah, exactly.
That's such a cool young grasshopper, go become the master approach to life. I just love that so much. I want to thank you both for doing this. Matt Ackerman, tell the people where to find you if they want to learn more about what you're up to.
Always a good follow on social media. Come over, find me on Twitter at Ackermann, which has oddly been my handle since I created a column in my college newspaper back in 1996. So at Ackermann. And if you want to check out the book, it's available on Amazon. I can't thank you enough, Matt, for having me on here. This has just been awesome. It's been a spectacle of spectacles with all of us with our glasses here. And man, it's just been so terrific. Thank you both for doing this.
Matthew, Stafford, what about you? Where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Well, yeah, look, to echo that, it's been a lot of fun. It's been great. And it's been really, really good to meet you both. You can look at 9others.com, the number 9, and then others.com. I'm on Twitter. I still like Twitter at Stafford.
Nice. Excellent. Make sure you get that book too.
Number 9. No, this has been awesome, guys. It's so terrific.
You know, honestly, collect, curate, connect, compound curiosity, compound goodwill too. Be champions. You're both champions. Engine, number 9 others. If my train goes off the track, pick it up. All the Matts, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a great time. You're watching Just Press Record, Cultish Creative, YouTube. Like, subscribe, all the things below, and we're out. Thanks for joining us. Like, comment, and hey, subscribe below to Cultish Creative on YouTube if you haven't already. As the good compliance people want me to remind you, Matt Ziegler, that's me, is a managing director at Sunpoint Investments. The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sunpoint Investments. No information on this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Securities discussed in the podcast may be holdings of clients of Sunpoint Investments. I hope you've been entertained. I hope you found this useful. I hope you talk to a professional before you try any of this stuff at home. And most of all, I hope you've subscribed. Be nice to each other out there. And don't forget, head over to cultishcreative.com and let's make curiosity a habit together. And I'm out.